Hey guys, in today's build video, I'm gonna share with you my different builds for the current meta exotic AR, which is Capacitor. Okay, so before I start with my build, I'm gonna talk about Capacitor first. So the reason why it's currently the meta right now is because the attribute can now be rerolled. Before, you can never reroll the attribute of Capacitor, and basically you're going to use this gun only for skill builds, but right now it can be used for a tanky DPS hybrid build or even a full DPS build. The reason for that is because attributes can be rerolled to damage to target out of cover, which is a good attribute for buffing your damage. So if you check on the core attributes and attributes of Capacitor, it's currently set to assault rifle damage, damage to armor, and damage to target out of cover. Since it has high damage to armor, and then if you spec it with damage to target out of cover, you will get a higher damage output. So basically, you're buffing the already high base damage of Capacitor. So even if you're not using any Fenris or any gears that improves or upgrades your AR damage, you will get a high base damage for this gun. So that's why it's currently the meta right now. As you can see, the total damage or base damage for this is 139k, even though I'm not using any Fenris on my build. So another thing about this is when you improve the expertise or you set it to 25 or max it out, you get a high damage output for this one. Okay, so for this build, this first build is basically my full DPS build. Okay, so I'm using Firewall for this one because of the ability of the Firewall, wherein whenever you use your kit, you get 200% armor regen. Okay, so for this build, I'm using Capacitor as my main weapon, but for the secondary and the pistol, I'm just using the FAMAS and first wave PF45. Okay, so for this build, I'm running this build with all my gears spec to crit chance and crit damage. The reason for that is to improve your base damage or get more damage output. You may want to get that crit damage, so you improve your crit chance so that you often activate or get that crit damage, and then crit damage boosts your base damage. Okay, so for this build, I'm running almost full red for this one. So the reason I'm using 3 pieces of YAL is to get the pulse resistance from this gear. Okay, so pulse resistance basically allows you to hide from scanner pulse, so you're totally immune from it if you get 3 pieces of YAL together with the pulse resistance or pulse resistance mod. So the reason for that is you get 40% from YAL, and then you get a 10% from the pulse resistance mod, so you get 50 pulse resistance, and then whatever specialization you're running, as long as it's maxed out, you get 50% pulse resistance. So the reason for that is so that I can hide from my enemies in the dark zone and be able to shoot from a distance. Okay, so whenever you're running full DPS, you may want to steer away from your enemies. You want to shoot at a safe location or distance because you're quite squishy. Okay, so for this build, I spec one of my YAL 2 armor to get at least a little bit of survivability. So as you can see, I upgraded all to 20, expertise 20, so that I get 1.1 million armor, even though I'm just using a single blue core. Okay, so the reason I use 3 pieces of YAL again is to be able to become invisible. And then I have here a Seska to improve my crit chance, because whenever you're running a YAL gear build, usually it has a very low crit chance. Sometimes you will hit a very low one at around 40%. You may want to get at least 50 or higher. So 55 is quite ideal, and then at least try to max it out. But for me, I'm okay with this build, and I spec it with Vigilance to further increase my weapon damage output because it gives 25% additional weapon damage as long as I'm not getting hit, because whenever I get hit or get damage, this buff is disabled for 4 seconds. Okay, so again, it's spec with crit chance and crit damage. Okay, I also run this build. Okay, so right now the contractor's gloves and fox's sprayer knee pad is not being used, not commonly used, but still I find this old meta gears to be able to improve the damage of my capacitor, because capacitor has damage to armor and damage to target out of cover. If I combine it with contractor's gloves, I get another damage to armor. So 8% together with the 12%, I get 20% damage to armor. So again, that boosts my overall damage output from the capacitor. And then I equip another fox's sprayer for that damage to target out of cover, which is 8%. So I get a total of 18% damage to target out of cover. Okay, so I get high damage from that combined with the glass cannon. So glass cannon amplifies my damage by 25%. However, I take an amplified damage of 50%. That's why I'm running it with yell, so that I can just hide from afar and then shoot my enemies. Okay, I combine this with the skill of decoy so that I can misdirect my opponents. I just place it whenever I'm already seen by my opponents. I use it and then reposition myself in somewhere that they cannot see me. I also use scanner pulse so that I can detect where my enemies are located or positioned, so that I can reposition myself in a safe distance. Okay, so if I look at the stats of this one, I get 139k weapon damage, 55k PVP weapon damage, 54% crit chance, 171% crit damage, 75% headshot damage, 20% armor damage, and 18% damage to target out of cover. Okay, another setup for this one is almost the same. 3 yells, sorry, and then I have 2 blues. So the reason I want 2 blues is if I want to be a little bit tanky for this one, even though I am DPS. I also run it with unbreakable, so you can also run it with unbreakable so that you have more survivability. Since unbreakable allows you to repair 95% of your armor. Okay, so you can also run it like this one. Sometimes I use this build whenever if I'm using glass cannon and I deal a lot of damage, I get the aggro from my opponents in the dark zone. So sometimes I switch to this so that I can continue playing as DPS, but at the same time I can at least strafe, or I can run even without dying quickly because of unbreakable and also an additional blue core. Okay, so sometimes I also use the old meta build. The old meta build has 2 Walker and Harris, so you use this to further boost your damage to armor, because 2 pieces of Walker and Harris gives you a total of 5% additional damage to armor. So for this build, I'm using it with 3 core blues, and if you upgrade your gears, you can get 1.4M with this setup, but the base armor will be 1.3 million for this one, or 1.3M. Okay, so for the stats of this old meta, you get 127k weapon damage, 51k PVP weapon damage, 54% crit chance, 183% crit damage, 75% headshot damage, 25% armor damage, and 18% damage to target out of cover. So I even use a full 6 blues for my core to get that tankiness capability for this build. So if I go full blue, okay, my setup would be I change my backpack to Matador. So try to get this gear because it's actually a meta whenever you want to go 6 blue. The reason is because Matador gives you the perfect adrenaline rush, which gives you 23% bonus armor for every enemy within 10 meters. So it stacks up to 3 times. Okay, it has more bonus armor compared to the standard Adrenaline Rush. And again, it's the same to Walker and Harris, and then I just switch my Fenris to my mask. Sometimes you can also run Catharsis on this build, and you change maybe your chest piece to Fenris so that you still get the bonus AR damage from the Fenris gear. Okay, so I combine this with Decoy again for misdirection, or to misdirect my opponents, and Defender Drone. So Defender Drone allows me to mitigate damage so that even though I'm tanky, I have an additional tankiness from this Defender Drone. I can reduce the incoming damage to me, and then I also have Unbreakable to allow me to survive more even though a lot of enemies or players are shooting at me. Okay, so this is my current builds or set of builds for the Capacitor Exotic AR meta. Hope this build helped you guys in playing the Division 2.